So my technology disaster is continuing. I've just tried to upload the English. I'm not sure it's actually worked, which is very annoying. So I'm going to kind of crack on with guided read, and then hopefully you will have an English lesson. So let's have a look. Let's do some guided read instead. Okay. So today you will need your character sketch that you did yesterday of either the skunk or the badger. And we're going to do something, we're going to learn the difference between something that is a statement and something that is implied, that is an implication. It's a very sophisticated reading skill and ones that adult readers and older readers do all the time. Okay, so a statement is something we are explicitly told in the text. So we know we are told in the text that Badger is a rock scientist. He is a geologist. He works with rocks. We know that Skunk and Badger live in a brownstone house. That's just a fact. They live in a house that's kind of long and thin and made of brownstone. We know that Skunk cooks breakfast. That is a fact. It happens in the book. So can you think of any more statements from the book that we've been told by the author? There are loads. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds. Okay, moving on. So something that is implied, so an implication is something we might assume or think, but we are not explicitly told. So, for example, this is not from Skunk and Badger. We are told in a piece of text that his face was red. So the statement is his face was red. But what you can infer or imply from that is he was angry, because sometimes when people get angry, their faces go red. Can you think of any different implications for this statement? So you might think, well, he was embarrassed, because some people, when they're embarrassed, their faces go red. You might think he was hot, and it was a really sunny day. He was hot and his face was red. So we can see one statement, he could be angry, he could be hot, he could be embarrassed. There's lots of different things that can be implied from the same statement. Okay. So this is your turn. So these are the three statements that I gave you before from Skunk and Badger. So Badger is a rock scientist or a geologist. Skunk and Badger live in a brownstone house, and Skunk cooks breakfast. What can be implied from those statements? So pause here, jot them down, write down something you think the author might be suggesting from these statements that we're not explicitly told. And like lots of things that we do in guided reading, there aren't any really right answers here. So what can we imply from these statements? So these were my ideas. So Badger is a rock scientist or a geologist. So I thought, well, Badger is probably interested in rocks. I thought that Badger might be good at working with rocks. I thought that Badger might have been to a volcano to study some rocks at some point in his life. But we aren't told any of those things. It's just some things that I think from the statement. Skunk and Badger live in a brownstone house. So I thought that Skunk and Badger might either live in New York or Boston, because there are lots of those style houses there. And I thought that Aunt Lulu might be rich, because brownstone houses are really expensive. Like houses in New York City are like literally millions, especially the brownstones like in the West Village and places like that. And then for Skunk cooks breakfast, I thought that Skunk might enjoy cooking, or that he might be a morning person. Don't know what one of those is. I'm certainly not. Or that Skunk enjoys eating breakfast. But we aren't told any of those things. That's just my opinion. So this is a bit like when we're doing like fact and opinion, a little bit. Okay, next thing. So you are going to go back to your drawing of Skunk or Badger from yesterday. If you've got two different coloured pens, this is really useful. So you're going to write your statements about your character in a blue pen. So this is something that we're explicitly told in the book. So it might be, if you've drawn the Badger, you've got an arrow coming off it that says Badger is a rock scientist, and that is a statement that we are told. And then another statement for Badger might be something like, Badger lived alone before Skunk moved in. We know this. We are explicitly told. We're probably told less about Skunk at this stage, but there are certain things. So a statement that we are told about the Skunk is he arrived with a suitcase. A statement that we are told about Skunk in chapter 3 is that he likes looking at the moon. So what could that imply about him? Then in a different colour pen, you're going to just write one thing that you could imply about the character. Let me show you. So this is my one. So this is, imagine I had drawn this skunk. This is what I think the skunk looks like. So the statement is in blue over here. Skunk arrived at the brownstone. He came to the brownstone house. So my implication from that was he was homeless and had nowhere to live. We don't know if that's true or not true at this point in the book, but that's just what I was thinking. Skunk arrived smiling. So he was smiling when he arrived at the door. So I thought, and I implied from that, he was happy to have arrived in New York. And I'm also implying that the house is in New York. We aren't explicitly told that at any point in the book, actually. And then we've got Skunk cooked breakfast. So I implied from that he was trying to impress Badger and wants Badger to like him. 3 to 5 of those statement and implication pairs for today. And then tomorrow we're going to go on and do a bit of AR quizzing before we move on to reading some more of the book next week.